right, we on. Good afternoon to all of our YouTube friends and family. I'm Quentin Avery.
And I'm Dr. Burks.
And we are your dynamic duo coming to you for another Bible study. We appreciate you, cousin Armand Avery, for looking for our videos and asking, where were you? We apologize. I was out of town last week, but we right back getting into it. Our topic today is what I'm going to have is I have a cross. And I've been asked a few times that about the scripture about an engraven image. So right here I have a cross. I've taken it off for right now so that I don't offend anybody that looks at this as an engraven image. And then we're going to get into some scriptures.
Okay.
And then by the end of the Bible study, I may or may not put it back on. We'll see. All right. So starting in Exodus chapter 19. Let's go to chapter 19. Actually, chapter 20.
Exodus. The exiting.
The exiting of Egypt.
Bondage.
Slavery. Is that physical slavery and bondage or spiritual?
Both.
That's right. Both. Yeah.
Exodus what?
I got chapter 20.
Okay. Exodus chapter 20. Okay.
All right. So in Exodus chapter 20, what you have is what we call the Ten Commandments. And Moses will go up to Mount Sinai and he will chisel out 2 stones and go up there, and then God is going to write the 10 Commandments with his finger. Not a human finger.
Right.
But the Spirit of God in that finger. We don't know what that looks like because he's a spirit. But I'm pretty sure he spoke it because everything he spoke comes into existence. I'm pretty sure he didn't have to work hard to do it. All right. And then in Exodus chapter 20, it says, and God spoke these words. He says, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. For you shall have no other gods before me. Notice, if you're reading along with us, that's a lowercase g. Notice that in verse 2, it says, I am the Lord your God, uppercase G. In verse 3, it says, you shall have no other gods before me.
No other gods.
You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, and so forth and so forth and so forth.
Right.
Okay, so you have first word is image in the form of anything in heaven above, on earth beneath, or in the waters below. And then in verse 5, you shall not bow down to them or worship them. So creating an image that actually looks like the image of a man or a woman or something that God creates. I just want to ask, I mean, could it be anything? I mean, if I have a set of praying hands as the charm, or anything hanging from the charm, I mean, is that an engraving image? If I have a person, Buddha statue,
right,
some type of something, and I actually take this image that is created and I actually pray to it and worship it, and I'm depending on this this image or this statue to answer prayers and actually speak back to me in my mind.
In your mind.
I'm talking to this clay.
Right.
And I'm praying to it and I'm bowing down to it. It's exactly what it says word for word.
Right.
So that's the starting point if we can get into it.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the 17th chapter of the book of Acts, we'll clarify a lot of things. See, engraving images.
So what did Paul say in the 17th chapter of Acts?
Well, let's go there. The 17th chapter of Acts. We can start at the first verse.
Okay, so in the 17th chapter of Acts, is he going to address some of these images?
He most certainly is.
All right, I want to read it then.
Yes, sir.
All right, when Paul and his companions had passed through, I think it's Apollopius and Apollonius. I'm sorry, I butchered that. They came to Thessalonica. I got that one right. Where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was his custom, Paul went into the synagogue, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned from the scriptures. He reasoned with them from the scriptures, explaining and proving that the Messiah had to suffer and rise from the dead. This Jesus I am proclaiming to you is the Messiah, he said. Some of the Jews were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a number of God-fearing Greeks and quite a few prominent women.
Now you notice it says Greeks. Greeks, the Greek mythology.
Greek mythology, okay.
Right.
Okay.
The god of thunder, the god Zeus, Hermes, Plato.
Lowercase g.
Right. See, they worship other gods. The god of thunder, the god of rain, the sun god, the moon god, these things in heaven.
And they made some statues to go along
the
with
Greek
that.
goddesses.
The Greek goddesses.
Right. The god of fertility and the god of this and the god of that.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Now you're putting some light on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as a large number of God-fearing Greeks, how could they be God-fearing Greeks if they... Okay. But it is uppercase G.
Right.
So, as a quite few of prominent women.
Right.
Okay. But other Jews were jealous. So they rounded up some bad characters from the marketplace, formed a mob, and started a riot in the city. They rushed to Jason's house and searched for Paul and Silas in order to bring them out into the crowd.
Right.
But when they did not find them, they dragged Jason and some other believers before the city officials, shouting, "These men who have caused trouble all over the world have now come here."
Right.
And Jason has welcomed them into his house. They are all defying Caesar's decrees, saying that there is another king, one called Jesus. When they heard this, the crowd and the city officials were thrown into turmoil, and they made Jason and the others post bond and let them go.
Right.
As soon as it was night, the believers of Paul and Silas sent Paul and Silas away to Berea. On arriving there, they went into a Jewish synagogue.
A Jewish synagogue.
So they wasn't resting. They was wherever they went into
right
the church or the synagogue to preach a message.
To preach the gospel.
They didn't go on vacation.
No. But if you notice when you first started, you had some Greeks that believed Paul's message. So when they believed Paul's message, they had to dismiss the God of thunder. They had to rethink.
Okay, but it says that in the beginning it says Paul and his companions passed through these cities, and when they came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue.
Right. Now he's dealing with the Jews. See, he was dealing with the Jews.
But the Greeks were in the Jewish synagogue.
Right, because they started believing the gospel. They believed the Old Testament. And so they converted. They were what the Bible call converts or proselytes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, so he went into the Jewish synagogue. So there's a lot of Jewish synagogues all over the place.
Yes, sir.
But among the Jewish synagogue, you had Greeks there that believed in many gods.
Right, because they were
Are
converted.
those the same as the Gentiles?
Right, anybody that's not a Jew is a Gentile.
Okay.
Abraham wasn't a Jew.
He was a Hebrew.
He was a Hebrew.
Okay.
Or a Gentile.
All right.
Adam wasn't a Jew. He was a Gentile.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, okay, so now we're at the Berean Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Now I want to. Okay, so they went to a city called Berea, and the people were called Bereans.
Right.
And the Bereans were Jews.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I understood it right.
Right.
Okay, so now the Berean Jews were more noble character than those in Thessalonica.
Right.
For they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scriptures every day to see if what Paul said was true.
Right.
As a result, many of them believed, as did also a number of prominent Greek women and many Greek men.
Mm-hmm.
So now you got Greek men, Greek women, and you have some Berean Jews from Berea that are being converted. Even the Jews,
yes,
are being converted.
Ephesians 2. Make two nations one. Physical Jews and spiritual Jews become one, born again.
All right. But when the Jews in Thessalonica learned, okay, so not these Jews, but some other Jews.
Right.
Okay, so when the Jews in Thessalonica learned that Paul was preaching the word of God at Berea, some of them went there too, agitating the crowd and stirring them up.
Right.
The believers immediately sent Paul into the coast, but Silas and Timothy stayed at Berea.
Mm-hmm.
Those who escorted Paul brought him to Athens and then left with instructions for Silas and Timothy to join him as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols.
Idols.
What kind of idols was it full with?
The idols that cannot see, hear, smell, taste, or feel.
All right, that's an idol.
That's an idol. He can't do nothing.
So we shouldn't bow down and worship something that looks like that, but a symbol that you wear around your neck is not something that you bow down to or worshiping.
That's right.
Okay.
Now, if Jesus was hung on a cross, which was a Roman way of killing you. It wasn't a Jewish way, it was a Roman way, because the Romans was in authority at that time. Now, if Jesus was put in an electric chair, which they didn't have electricity, people would be wearing electric chairs around.
I got it late.
Okay. They'll be wearing electric chairs and chains and gold. But since he was crucified on the cross, but see, the Jehovah's Witnesses don't use cross. They use torture stake. They don't like the word cross. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
No, Jehovah's Witnesses don't want to hear that about cross. He didn't die on the cross. He died on a torture stake.
Okay.
In some translations, it says that he, in Galatians 3:13, says he blessed is every man that hang up on a tree.
Cursed.
Cursed on a tree. The blessed that's cursed on a tree.
Yeah.
But if you take the tree, a live tree, cut it down, and make the cross out of wood,
you got a dead tree.
You got a dead tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's see what's happening here. So now Paul is greatly distressed because as he's waiting for his companions to come back, he goes to a city called Athens, and he sees that the city is full of idols.
Okay.
Nobody believing in the one true God.
Because these are Gentile Greeks.
Gentile Greeks.
Right. And they're very educated people. Plato, Socrates, they were very
Greek
educated.
philosophers.
Right. All they did was sit around and talk about the latest and the greatest. Philosophy. Yeah, the love of knowledge.
The love of knowledge.
That's all philosophy is the love of knowledge.
Oh, wow. This is getting deep.
Put on your scuba gear.
This is getting deep.
Spiritual scuba gear.
Yeah. It's getting deep. All right. So, he reasoned in the synagogue. He went back in the synagogue?
Yes, he had a message.
Golly, that's 3 different cities, 3 different synagogues.
Right.
Paul is crazy.
No, Paul wasn't crazy. Paul had a revelation. For me to live is Christ, but to die is gain.
Okay.
Kill me, because I'm still going to be all right. Somebody said there's no hell. I said, well, I'm still doing good. But they said there's not a hell you're going to go to, but there's a hell on earth.
Oh, man.
A man that been married more than once been to hell. Go ahead, my
Okay,
son.
so he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks. He got them both in there.
Yeah.
And he's by himself, just going against both groups.
Well,
Oh, he's a bad man.
No,
All right.
it's not his time to die.
Okay, so now he's reasoning with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happen to be there. Anybody can get it.
Right.
Who's here and who wants to debate.
Right.
All right. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" Others remarked, "He seems to be advocating foreign gods," lowercase g. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Apiopolis, where they said to him, "May we know this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean." All of the Ephesians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Apollopolis and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious, for I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship."
Hold it right there. Susan want to know, how do you spot a religious person?
By their objects of worship.
By their object of worship.
Object of worship.
Right. You got Buddha sitting in your house, or you got the statue of Mary. That some people believe that Mary's still a virgin. But she had children after Christ. That don't make her no longer a virgin.
Amen.
Okay.
So, people of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For I have walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship. I even found an altar with this inscription: "To an unknown God."
To an unknown God. They had every God, but they couldn't. They said, "Well, we won't leave out no God, so we just write unknown."
Yeah, just in case we miss one.
Right. Right. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So it's an unknown God. And so Paul said, "So you are ignorant to the very thing you worship. And this is what I'm going to proclaim." Yeah, this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. The same thing that you worship, all of these idols.
Right.
You even got an inscription to an unknown God, so you don't even know who you worship.
So can we put it in this frame of mind? What you believe, if you can't explain what you believe, do your belief have any value?
Well, it's an unknown.
But they believe what they believe, but they cannot explain what they believe and why they believe it.
It's still an unknown God.
Right. They say it's 2 days in a person's life that is very important. When you was born and when you find out why you were born.
Okay. That's a new one.
You know you was born, but why were you born? You have to find out what's your reason for existence.
Okay. Now, back to what your question, if you can't explain what you believe, matter of fact, what's your quote? If your religion
don't change you, you ought to change religions. You ought to change your belief.
Yeah. So, yeah, without being able to explain the things of God, without being able to explain the image of God, the attributes of God, then he's unknown to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who he is.
Correct.
But yet, I love the Lord.
Right.
I love Jesus.
Right.
But all you know is December 25th.
Right.
That's not too good.
Or Easter.
Or Easter.
The resurrection.
That's not too good, ladies and gentlemen.
At all.
You're not known by him, and you don't know him, but you need to know him and be known by him. Very, very important.
Right.
But that's another subject.
Okay.
All right. So Paul says, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship. That would have been insulting, but let's move on.
Okay.
And this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. So he said you are ignorant, and then he began speaking, saying, I got something I want to tell you.
Right.
I don't know if he would have got those words out after you called me ignorant, but he said you're ignorant to the very things you worship.
But the Greeks were very open
to hear the philosophy.
Right. They want to hear this new thing.
The new thing.
Because that's all they did, sit around and hear new things.
Yeah.
So when Paul came with Christ and the
Some
resurrection, when you talk about somebody rising from the dead, I want to hear what this babbler got to say.
You got some strange ideas.
And you got some listeners.
Yeah.
You have an audience now.
Let's hear what Paul said.
Okay.
All right. He said, the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands.
That's very important.
Very important. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything.
Hold it right there. The most famous saying is, I'm glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And he just said that God does not dwell in temples or in houses or in tents made with hands. So it's no longer he dwelling in a house or building that's made with hands, brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. Now he's dwelling in bodies.
To an unknown God.
To an unknown God.
As if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else.
Wait a minute, everyone?
Everyone.
You mean tell me the people that hasn't been born again?
Even they get rained on, the just and the unjust.
Right.
Yeah.
But in him,
we have life and breath and everything else.
right.
Yeah. He says, from one man, he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times and histories and the boundaries of their land. Mm-hmm. God did this.
Right.
You didn't do this.
Right.
God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us.
Wow.
For in him we live and move and have our being.
You mean tell me we can't get outside of him?
In him we live and move and have our being.
So on the
because
moon,
it is him that give life and breath and everything else.
so if we go to the moon,
He is there.
but there is no gravity,
Or no breath.
but we still move and live
Yeah.
and have our being.
Right. Because he's given us the knowledge.
Because you can be dead
It's
where
still-
there's no gravity, you're going to float away.
Right. Yeah.
Okay?
So then he says, for in him we live and move and have our being. Then he says, as some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Therefore, since we are God's offspring, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. This is not God to me.
No.
I think I'll put it on. It cost me a pretty penny.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll put it back on.
Right.
But in conclusion, where is great is Artemis? Great is Artemis. Remember when they was talking about the we'll get into that later. When they were mad because the people that were making the actual gods were losing their value because they were saying that these gods are no gods at all.
That's an Acts.
It's right here.
Yes, an Acts.
Yeah. So Paul continues by saying in verse 30, in the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. So, if you are bowing down to any imagery that he says divine being is like gold or silver or stone, that an image made by human design. When he writes over here, he says that the God who made the world and everything else is the Lord of heaven and of earth and does not live in temples built by human hands and is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, it is he himself who gives everyone life and breath and everything else. I would think that you need that knowledge.
Yes.
Because if you have a knowledge that wearing a cross or any type of shape or form of imagery, then you might be serving an unknown God because you are lacking the knowledge that you need to understand what God is speaking about when you create an image that's supposed to look like a God, like the Greeks did.
Right.
And then bow down to that God as if he can hear your prayers, as if he can answer your prayers, and as if it's powerful enough to move on your behalf.
Right.
In the past, God overlooked such ignorance.
Ignorant. Meaning,
Paul said, I see and you were very ignorant and very religious.
But you know what? The word ignorant is not a bad word. It's how you use it. Teach a person to think, they'll love you. Tell them to think, they'll hate you. If you call a person you ignorant, I just told you what to do. Now, that'll cause problems. But Martin Luther King said a man can be ignorant in a library, or he can starve to death in a supermarket. That's his choice.
That's his choice, to stay ignorant or to go.
There's nothing wrong with being ignorant, but don't stay ignorant. It's all right to be lost, but don't stay lost.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this topic. I'm Quentin Avery.
And I'm Dr. Burks.
And we'll see you next time at the next Bible study or the next topic.
Yes.